The Fords entertain the Queen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. The year was 1976, and President Ford and his wife, on July the 7th, held a dinner for Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. It was the bicentennial, a celebration of the nation's independence. What could go wrong? So let's see what happened on that special day. Preparation, Betty Ford said, "We put up a tent for the Queen's dinner. There was so many state events coming up one night after the other that without the tent we'd probably have to close the White House to the public for a good portion of the summer. And it was the bicentennial year, and the influx of tourists was heavy. A tent over the Rose Garden would be the answer, just a great white tent, which would also enable us to invite more guests than we could have if served indoors. For indoor dining, the White House can handle 150 people at one time, and that's pushing it." So it sounded like a good plan, but in Betty's memoirs, she said an hour and a half before the Queen's dinner, there was a sudden downpour with torrential rain, thunder, lightning. 3 trees on the White House grounds were struck. Betty said that she insisted that the tent have a wooden floor. She had remembered when the Nixons had given newly released prisoner of wars at dinner with their wives, and it had been raining for 3 days, and the chairs just gradually sank into the ground, and all those poor wives who had gone out and bought new shoes ruined them in the mud. She said, "We'll have a floor and a carpet, and then it'll be just like a room. So good thing the First Lady did that, or it could have been a disaster." And then Betty Ford had violinists set up on the paths leading to the tent. She said to be out on the gorgeous night air with the moon shining down and the violinists playing made for an unforgettable night. The First Lady said the Queen was easy to deal with. She was very definite about what she wanted and what she didn't want. She loved Bob Hope and Telly Savalas, so they were invited. And then if I hadn't kept mixing up Your Highness and Your Majesty, he's His Highness and she's Her Majesty, I'd give myself 4 stars for the way the visit went. So the meal, this was quite a meal. The New York Times had an article which told what happened that day in the kitchen. There were 224 people invited to the event. Preparations were made earlier in the day in the modest-sized white tile and stainless steel kitchen of the White House. They were interrupted for 2 hours while Julia Child and a television camera crew rolled in for the filming of a segment showing how the dishes were made. I'm sure that made them nervous, as if they didn't have enough things going on in the kitchen. So the chef said he was using seasonal food, that it should be possible to do some of the preparation in advance. And as he spoke, he showed a walk-in refrigerator, which had 25 giant 4-pound lobsters that were cooked, glazed, and mounted up on their front haunches, ready to go. And it said it was also necessary for every course to be served at a specified time, and that the dinner end within a precisely appointed time span. The event had to last at least 1 hour, but no more than an hour and 15 minutes. For this reason, no dishes could be included unless they could be ready. So the veal saddles that the chef had cost $1,000 for 26, and the lobsters called New England on the menu, although purchased from a wholesaler in New York, were obtained for an unnamed price. The menu, they had New England lobster on Bellevue sauce, remoulade saddle of veal, rice croquettes, broccoli mornay, garden salad, Trappist cheese peach ice cream Bombay with raspberry Petit Fours demitasse. The wines, Sterling Chenin Blanc 1972, Bellevue Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon 1968, Schattenberg Blanc de Blancs 1973 cordials and liquors. The guests, well, this was a white tie affair, and they were seated in groups of 8 and 10 at round tables. In addition to Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, guests at the head table included President and Mrs. Ford, Vice President and Mrs. Rockefeller, Secretary of State and Mrs. Kissinger, and British Foreign Secretary Anthony Crosland and Mrs. Crosland. And the entertainers were Bob Hope and the Captain and Tennille. Among some of the guests were Alice Longworth, Lady Bird Johnson, Helen Hayes, Julie Harris, Eugene Ormandy, Merle Oberon, Dorothy Hamill, Bill Blass, Alistair Cook, Cary Grant, Willie Mays, and Telly Savalas. And the jewelry at the event? Bob Hope joked, "I'd never seen an affair as glamorous as this dinner. The diamonds, the jewels," Hope marveled. The women looked good, too. He also poked a little fun at the royal guest. "I did a show for Prince Philip. There were 25 members of royalty. It looked like a chess game," he cracked. In America, when we see a crown, we expect to see a margarine commercial. So the American press was particularly wowed by the Queen's diamond tiara. The Kokoschnik style diadem was made in 1888 as a silver wedding anniversary present for Queen Elizabeth's great-grandmother, Queen Alexandra. And with the tiara, the Queen wore more diamonds from her collection. Her earrings, the Greville chandeliers, were part of the remarkable 1942 inheritance received by the Queen Mother. And the Queen Mother had given the earrings to Elizabeth as a wedding present in 1947. The Queen also wore a diamond festoon necklace that was commissioned by her father, King George VI, in 1950. Her diamond bracelet, which featured a distinctive twist in its design, was a gift from George VI in 1949. And she finished off the look with a diamond ring on her right hand. So I love all her jewelry as inherited, so I'm glad she had a chance to wear them for the occasion. And according to court jeweler, a special brooch was given by the Queen and the Duke to Mrs. Ford ahead of the state dinner. The royals commissioned the brooch from one of their favorite jewelry designers, Andrew Grima. The starburst jewel was made of gold and set with marquise-cut diamonds with the Queen's royal cipher in the center. It was a perfect piece for the British monarch to give to celebrate the 4th of July. There's a few mishaps. I mentioned this in the short I did, and it was amusing, so I'll include it here too. So Betty Ford said she was scared to death at the thought of entertaining Queen Elizabeth at the dinner in 1976. What put her at ease was how gracious and charming and warm Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were. So song choices that went wrong in retrospect. One was the choice by the captain of Tennille of a song about a couple of muskrats making love. So Betty Ford said, it was a cute little song that I didn't think offensive, but it's hard to please everybody. And another thing that happened was that when the Marine Band struck up The Lady is a Tramp, the Queen was starting to dance. So Betty said, I thought it was a funny coincidence. It really didn't bother me. Maybe it was referring to me, she said, laughing. And some in England didn't like Nelson Rockefeller putting his arm around Queen Elizabeth while he was talking to her. So Betty Ford said she didn't remember Rockefeller doing such a thing, but she said, I'm sure Nelson gave it his best shot, and he wanted to make her feel at home. He was that kind of natural, gregarious, warm, friendly person. So how did they get along? The First Lady said she relaxed a little when she and the President were escorting the royal couple to the yellow oval room by the way of the elevator, and her son, Jack Ford, the middle son, appeared with his dress shirt undone and holding his studs. He quickly disappeared. The Queen said, oh, think nothing of it. I have one of those at home. And obviously she does, Betty Ford said in her memoirs. In fact, a couple of them from what I read. I think probably Prince Andrew has caused her some similar experiences of looking for, well, maybe not dress studs, she said. Comments on the entertainment? Well, Bob Hope had Prince Philip laughing, but some people were not impressed with the Captain and Tennille. They performed 4 songs, including their biggest hit, Love Will Keep Us Together, and their upcoming single was Muskrat Love. So I always liked the Captain and Tennille, but choosing the single Muskrat Love wasn't that great. I never liked the song, even back then. According to thecourtjeweler.com, Tony Tennille later recalled that Henry Kissinger was seated in the front row, and he seemed miserable throughout the performances. And he wasn't the only one. An unnamed British dignitary told Sally Quinn of the Washington Post, I bloody well didn't come all the way over from England to come to the White House and listen to a couple of muskrats. Lady Keith, wife of banker Sir Kenneth Keith, told the press it wasn't a suitable song to sing for the Queen. Tennille brushed off the criticism, telling Rolling Stone, if they really try to protect her, it must be a drag to be a queen. So the party was doing pretty well, and it went on till the wee hours of the morning. The Queen retired to her room about 20 to 1, and the Fords were dancing for another hour. And after the royal guests had gone to bed, reporters spotted Mrs. Ford and Bob Hope showing off their moves as the band played the Chattanooga Choo Choo. So the Queen makes a great toast. The Queen described the union between Great Britain and the United States. History is not a fairy tale, she said. What is more important is that our shared language and traditions and history have given us a common vision of what is right and just. So I'm glad that the United Kingdom and the United States bonded. According to the stategovernment.com, the United States had no closer ally than the United Kingdom. Following the end of the American Revolution in 1783, the United Kingdom officially recognized American independence, and in 1785, the two countries established diplomatic relations. So I remember the bicentennial and how special it felt that year. The United States was celebrating its 200th birthday, and the excitement and festivity was in the air. At our house, we had a celebration in the backyard, and it was the good old hamburgers, hot dogs, and more, and it was great fun. And I'm glad the White House had their celebration and invited Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip to join in on the fun, and it looked like everybody was having a great time. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. If you haven't hit the notification bell, be sure to do so, and it'll inform you when a video is ready to view. So I wish everybody a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.